What's up, guys? Mark Drumheller here with Dave Gleckner. XFL Week 4. We're churning through the season. 3 weeks down, 7 weeks to go. We're starting with Week 4. Powered by the Sharp app, guys. If you haven't downloaded the Sharp app, make sure you do it now. Tons of great information, educational tools. NBA top props is hitting, but we got bets. Our professional handicappers are doling out winners in every single sport. You know, NHL, NBA, college basketball, you name it. So get over to the Sharp app and join us. But we have you covered for the XFL Week 4 now. Dave, we saw a little bit of more offense this week. That was kind of the big story to me. You know, after teams only averaging 17 points per game in Week 3, we saw that climb to 22. We saw a lot of higher scoring games. You know, we started the week with, Vegas and Seattle, 30-26. Josh Gordon, 65-yard touchdown on 4th and 2 to win the game. And then we saw that continue a little bit. St. Louis, D.C., still a lot of turnovers, 13 turnovers last week. There were 13 in Week 2, 16 in Week 1. So that has kind of been pretty much the main story is, you know, a lot of turnovers. You know, it's generating a lot of good field position from people, but the offenses are starting to click. That was kind of my big takeaway.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, even, some of those better quarterbacks are starting to stand out, right? Like, I think the McCarron to Butler combination is looking really good in St. Louis. Obviously, you talked about Gordon in Seattle. DiNucci throws another huge game, 377. The ball is moving through the air. Like, that's really impressive, I thought, because it's a league where, you're still adapting to some rules and such. And now I think the offenses are catching up. And I think you're seeing a lot more in that passing game. And it is impressive. Even, we closed out with a decent game with the Houston playing San Antonio.
Yeah, Houston-San Antonio was good. The goal line stand was good, man. Huge. I was surprised Houston kind of let them back in that game. But, the goal line stand was fun.
Yeah, Cone moved it through the air. And I thought they got a little conservative, and we're going to get to it in the first game here. But I think Houston's starting to get a little conservative when they switch these quarterbacks with McDonald and such. They've had 2 big halftime leads that they've let get away from them in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the first game. We'll start with that one. Houston -9 now at Orlando. So we have 2 revenge games this week. This is one of them. Houston trounced Orlando Week 1, 33-12. We cashed our Houston tickets there in Week 1. They've won all 3 games by 9 points or more. So they won 2 games by 9, and then of course they beat this Orlando team by 21. I think that they're probably the best team in the XFL right now. If I had to, pick a team, Wade Phillips' defense has just been tremendous, and that's one thing that I kind of look for in this game. Orlando has allowed 13 sacks on the season. Houston leads the XFL in 13 sacks. And that's really, the difference between these two teams. And I think that's how Houston's going to be able to dictate it here. We were on Orlando last week against Arlington, taking the big number. I can't do it this week. I laid it with Houston. I got 8.5, but I would lay it with 9. I just think that this is the top versus the bottom in the XFL. And Houston's a team with that run and shoot offense with A.J. Smith to where they can put points on the board. They can win by margin. And I just don't think that there's much hope for Orlando. I'm not saying that they're going to go 0-10, but they're not going to be able to beat the top echelon teams. They're going to have to pick their spots if they're going to find a win this year.
I'm on the other side, and
are you?
Yeah,
look at you.
One of my big reasons, and stating this now, this is Houston's first game when they're traveling outside the state of Texas. They've been in the comfortable confines of Texas for the first 3 games, and again, watching them kind of bully out the leads and let them bleed away is not a recipe for long-term success. I'm a little concerned with where they're heading with this offense. Silvers has been a little bit loose with the ball here. Then you bring in the gadget McDonald. One thing Orlando's done well is actually stop the run. And I think if they can just, hold up a little bit, and they have all the motivation in the world. They're getting kicked on. They're getting spat on. There's a point they will break, like you said, maybe not only 10, but it could go that way if they don't get one of these soon. And I think they're going to play this one all out like almost for the playoff live. So I like the 9. I think it's high. I think it's heavy. And I'd rather take the points here with the home team. And one caveat, we could see Quentin Flowers. We don't know that yet, but there's rumors out there the QB, the hero from South Florida, may make his appearance in Orlando this week. And that would be really good for them.
It would if it works out. Now, I have some concerns with Flowers because he was with the old XFL in 2020, was part of the Tampa Bay Vipers. You know, when they had the team, Vipers obviously moved to Vegas, played one half, got benched, and demanded a trade. So, Quentin Flowers was, demanded a trade, which is kind of hilarious. But, I think that's pretty funny. And I just think that if he had that kind of trouble under Mark Trestman with Jaime Elizondo, who's, now the offensive coordinator for, San Antonio, like this Buckley doesn't seem like he's got a good locker room going, right? Like, he's always yelling at the players saying he needs new players. I just think it's kind of like you're putting a person who hasn't had success previously into a volatile situation. So I think we might not yet be rock bottom in Orlando, but you're right. I mean, listen, 9 points is like 99 in the XFL. Yeah, it's a huge number. With the margin of victory, it's hard to lay these kind of numbers. So I can understand grabbing the points with the dog. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get there.
We've already
I laid it with Houston. Yeah. But, we'll see how it goes. Listen, I would love it if Orlando got the upset and we got some more like my ideal scenario, and then we'll get into the other games. I know people don't want me to talk about how I want the whole season to go, but if we get to like week 7 of this thing and all these teams are kind of like tied in the middle of it, and like that's going to be awesome. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want what I don't want is teams to be like out of it early. You know what I mean? So we'll see. We'll see if, what Orlando has in them, if they can kind of muster it up and be competitive here. But you're right. Houston, one of the things that defensively, they're awesome. They lead the XFL in sacks. They force a ton of turnovers, but they also turn the ball over a lot too. Like they're very sloppy, you know what I mean, from that perspective. So they could let Orlando in the game. And Orlando did move the ball 5 yards per play last time they played. I think it was 5.1. So like moving the ball wasn't a problem. They just kept shooting themselves in the foot. I like Lattimore. I think Lattimore is probably their best player.
I think so too. I do like the running back Martin. Jermaine Martin is pretty tough, runs hard. So out of those two, Eli Rogers gives them a little grit too. But outside that, I'm with you.
Well, what I like? I like the kid Lance Lenoir, who they just signed. They got him in week 2. Yeah, he just really started playing last week. But he was with Michigan in the USFL, and he's a pretty good player. I mean, but I think the problem is like, they're talking about bringing in a quarterback, and but they get murdered on the offensive line. Like that's the issue. Like they don't have an offensive line. So we'll see how that goes. But we spent way too much time on the Orlando Guardians. Let's move on to, the second game. And what is the second game? Is it the
Seattle San Antonio?
Yeah. Seattle San Antonio. So this is going to be a fun one. This one's in Seattle, 10 o'clock at night on Saturday. So we get a late start. San Antonio plus 4.5. We got a total of 40.5. I took the Brahmas here. I went dog. I took the point. Well, I shouldn't say that because I didn't bet it yet, but I'm going to take them. I'm just waiting to see, can I get 5? Can I get 5.5? How far is this number going to go? So I've been watching it, but I'm going to be on the Brahmas. Seattle's the best team by far on paper. They're 1.7 net yards per play. The offense got 8.2 yards per play last week against Vegas, clicking on all cylinders, but they're -7 in turnover margin. DiNucci's always throwing the ball to the other team. I don't think they'll clean that up. And I just think against this San Antonio team where they do have a good pass rush, they're going to get to DiNucci. They're going to force DiNucci into mistakes. And they want to run the ball on offense. They're very conservative. They want to shorten possessions, kind of like grind it out like into a game, play keep away. I think if they do that, like I think the points are valuable. Seattle is 0-2-1 against the spread this season. So, despite how great they are, they're not covering numbers. They're favorites each week and they're not covering. So I'm going to take a shot with the Brahmas here. Listen, if Seattle gets a big lead in this one, I don't think the Brahmas are built to come back, but I think they can keep it close. What do you think?
I got the Brahmas, baby. Hey,
there you go. Now we're on the right side.
It's written in my XFL betting book, which is coming out one day, but don't take DiNucci. Give him points. Yeah. Don't I'll make an acronym for that one of these days. But even last week in a game they should have lost, they threw up a Hail Mary to Josh Gordon, and he muscles his way backwards into the end zone for a 65-yard touchdown.
I don't know how he didn't get tackled. I don't know what the cornerback did. I had it in slow motion, and he was literally like draped all over him. I'm like,
The fact of the matter is Seattle does not create enough pressure defensively to keep teams at bay. They've only generated, I think, 4 sacks the whole season in 3 games. And it's not like the offense holds on to the ball a ton. They're moving the ball up the field and they're punting or they're scoring. So,
and they don't force turnovers.
They don't force that
one
either.
turnover. Yep.
Yeah. So I just think San Antonio can stay within this game. We talked about them early in the season. They are a physical running team. They got Balaj, Patrick. And then Cone has impressed me. We talked about he was tied with the XFL lead in touchdowns, I think, going into last week. And he's able to find guys here and there, and he's a professional quarterback that can read and do his progressions. I think that's a good recipe against this defense, and I think they're going to stay within the game. I take the points all day against Seattle right now. They have played every game until the last second, and they haven't been able to cover one yet. Why am I going to give 4.5 points?
Yeah, I agree with you. They got to prove it to me if they can cover these numbers. 2 quick things. You mentioned Cone, awesome point. I think you can get the Cone if you can pressure him. Like we saw that with Houston. Like if you can put pressure on him, you can rattle him, take him off his spot. But that's not Seattle's defense. So he's going to have time to go back there and operate short passing game. He's got nice, big, tall wide receivers with good length. He can get the ball to him, be very efficient, a la Alex Smith, that type of thing they got going on there. And like I said, I like the offensive coordinator, Elizondo. So I think they'll be ready for Seattle here. Any thoughts on the total, 40.5? I've backed off totals. I didn't bet one total this week just because, Seattle losing to Seattle Vegas under in 40-mile-per-hour winds when they put up 56 points was enough for me. I'm off totals. I'm gonna take a break.
Yeah, I actually did.
Any thought on the total?
Yeah, I didn't bet the over necessarily in that game, but I thought it was going to be a high-scoring game for a few different reasons. And I'm with you. The win shouldn't happen, but it was just a DFS play. But anyway, I don't really like the totals in anything right now, XFL. So don't take this as, my pick, but I would lean over. I just think San Antonio is going to be able to move the ball enough. And Seattle's played every single game into the 40s.
Yeah, that makes sense. It really does. But like I said, I just after last week, I'm like, you know what, dude? Like, I can't with these totals. It's like it's like a windstorm. Like, Danucci's throwing the ball, and it's like and then it's like, I don't know, man. What are you gonna do? But yeah, I'm taking a break on the totals. But the side we agree, the Brahmas. Let's go to the third game, and that's going to be the St. Louis Battlehawks and Arlington Renegades. St. Louis laying 4. Dave, we're on the right side here. I played some money line -175 with St. Louis, but just because they're kind of like the heart attack Hawks, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like their first 2 wins, their last second field goals, that sort of thing. I think they're a much better team than Arlington, but where Arlington is strong is defensively. They do generate pressure. They can shut down the running game. They can make plays. And that's where St. Louis really struggles, is protected the quarterback. They let up a ton of sacks. Offensive line is not real good. Now, McCarron makes up for most of that. But so that's why I was a little reluctant to lay the points. I would never play Arlington. But I was more comfortable laying the $1.75 than the 4 points. What are your thoughts on this one?
I like it. Listen, Arlington has 2 wins this year, and they're against teams that have 0. So their 2 wins are against teams combined 0-6. They have the least rushing yards in the league. They've only managed 3 runs of over 8 yards, none over 12. They're 2.5 a carry. They have to rely on dink-dunk situations. And if they even ask Sloter this week to try and open it up, it's lights out. I just really believe that. They have such a bad offense and scheme that so far their defense has scored, what do I want to say, 4 touchdowns? Something like, 3 at least. They've been the beneficiary and they've been the scoring unit. Offense has 3 touchdowns. It's a mess there. And then you roll into St. Louis. And last week, one of my biggest play was DC, and they ended up paying off. But I came out of that game more impressed with St. Louis than I was going in, because I knew St. Louis had a couple gifted wins. I want to say the first 2 weeks. Last week, they should have came out of that game probably with a W or even a little closer than it came. And that was because they were able to move the ball effectively versus a very good, maybe the second best defense in the XFL. So I came out impressed with McCarron. I came out impressed with Butler and some of the units other guys they use. They still can't find a way to get Aitman the ball. And I know he's a little dinged up, but they're going to find ways to move the ball. They're going to be hyped up. The dome, the atmosphere. They're coming back from the XFL.
The atmosphere is going to be fire, dude. It's going to be incredible there. It's really going to be incredible there.
And they felt like they had something going 3 years ago. They're going to show they had something going. I'm really pumped for this game and that team and that town. where they got robbed of the Rams. Bring back the Hawks, baby, and watch them roll.
Yeah. I was on the XFL Sports Gambling podcast with the guys from SGPN, and they had one of the guys there like lives in like St. Louis area, and he was saying that like they have these watch parties that they've sold out for the road games. And like now, like they can't wait for this. Like it's going to be incredible, like this atmosphere. So that's why I was like, hey, you know what? Like they're going to win this game. I'm just going to play the money line. I will pay as expensive as it is. Like I don't think they're losing the game. They're the better team. Interesting point about Arlington, though. We talked about before we move on. We talked about Seattle, right? Seattle, number one team in the XFL in net yards per play, number one offense in the XFL by a long shot. Arlington is the worst offense, right? 3.3 yards per play. They're last in the XFL in net yards per play at minus 1.2, right? So there's almost like a 3-yard per play difference, which is massive in the XFL. It's massive in the NFL, but massive in the XFL between Seattle and Arlington. But if you go to the futures odds board, you could get Seattle plus 750 and Arlington plus 650. So I still think there's just kind of like a massive discrepancy in the market of them overrating Arlington. Now, listen, Arlington's 2-1. They play in the weak division, which is the South. So I think it's 2 teams in each division make the playoffs, while Seattle's in there with St. Louis, DC, Vegas. Like the North Division's much tougher. So they do have a tougher path, but we have 7 weeks to iron this out. Like it's not like the season's ending next week and you need to, rattle off a couple wins in a row. I just think it's crazy. Like when I look at the futures and I'm like, they really have Arlington at 6.5 to 1 and Seattle at 7.5 to 1 when there's a 3 yards per play difference between these two teams. It's absolutely sick. But listen, we're already invested in Seattle futures. I don't need to buy them at this number. We have better numbers, but they're going to be a really interesting team. So I'm excited to see this one. Love the Battle Hawks. Think we're definitely on the right side on this one. But let's get to the last game so we can get you out of here. The last game is going to be DC. The Lemons will be out. The Beer Snakes will be out in DC. Another great environment. And they're hosting Vegas, 0-3, still looking for their first win after last week's heartbreak. I took 6 points here with the dog. Now, I took the 6 points. I know Vegas's defense, it does not look good. Got really torn up against Seattle. But DC is a team that wants to beat you with the running game. Tiamo impressed me, had some big explosive pass plays against St. Louis. I don't think he can do it again. But even if he does, like, Vegas's offense looked really good with Hundley. Like that was his first action in dry weather. First game was the rainstorm. When they played DC the last time, it was 18-6. He put up 5.8 yards per play against that Seattle defense, which is the third highest mark on the season out of any of the teams. Now, the first highest 2 marks belong to Seattle. So I think, this Vegas offense could very well be the second best in the whole entire league. Now their defense has some work to do, right? We talked about that, but I just thought 6 points was a lot here, man. Like it was a whole lot. And I know DC's probably better than, I had them pegged for, but I just had to take 6 points with the dog, especially knowing that they have an offense that's ascending as Hundley gets more and more comfortable.
So we have our second one where I'm going to be on the other side. And a big reason for this.
Disagreement. We're going to war again.
Yeah. And I mean, I got to say, I love matchups in the trenches. And this is an absolute 1,000% mismatch. Vegas has let up 470 yards on the ground in 3 games. They let up 229 on the ground the last time they played DC. Now, we can go back to that game a little bit and see that Vegas had some early success, and that's when they did switch to Hundley. But as it got later in the game, they were not able to figure out. Now, that was like a monsoon, and that was rain and stuff, and that probably helped a little bit of the Washington game.
I think there might be rain again in the forecast, though.
Sunday night in Washington. I know Monday's getting rain on the East Coast. They might get it starting Sunday night. It's very possible. But in the end, I just think the domination and the factor, I mean, even last week versus the Seattle team that doesn't try and run the ball, Ellison goes for over 100 yards. DiNucci grabs 7 yards per carry on the ground. Now you got Te'amu and Derek King coming at you. I just think it's going to be really hard for Vegas to stop the DC rushing attack. And if they get physically pushed around, that deflates you. And I just think in the end, I think this is a good matchup for DC. Listen, we also got to realize this is DC's 3rd home game in 4 weeks, right?
Yeah,
they got to take advantage of the schedule now, and they know that. And I have a lot of faith in DC right now. I think they will get exposed at some point. They almost did it last week, but I think they come back, buckle up, and they take care of business this week. I like them to win this game with the margin, so I'll take them minus the 6.
Trying to look at the weather right now. I probably should have done this before
before
we hopped on live.
While you're looking at that, I think Vegas is way better than the 0-3 record. So take that. I do think Vegas actually will start getting this thing rolling soon. I mean, they might get to 0-4, but they're going to find a way. I think they're better than their record shows. I think they're probably.
Yeah, I think last week's game really stung. Like, as far as like their outlook for the season, like I think if they won that game, went 1-2, I think they would be live in this matchup. But yeah, it looks like 55% chance of rain, so we could get some more rain in DC for this one. That would be tough for Vegas because that's not the style they want to play, right? They don't want to sit there and have to line up in a slot fest and run the ball at each other. They can't run the ball worth a lick, so that definitely favors DC if we do see the rain. But I'm going to be on Vegas. I'm hoping I can get 6.5, maybe even 7. You know, we'll see what the line moves, but I just think that this is a lot of points for DC to lay.
It is.
But you know, we'll see how it goes. But so we agree on 2. We're opposite on 2, which means we're probably going to split. Hopefully, we both go 3-1.
I'll take it,
and then go from there. But you know, listen, awesome job, Dave. Week 4 down the hatch. You know, we got 6 more weeks left to run through this thing, and the league is evolving each week. So, but like I said, you're starting to see a little separation between the teams. I think a team like San Antonio, this is a big game for them against Seattle, because I think if they drop this game, that kind of puts them a little bit closer to the bottom tier. You know, I really have Houston, and then I have Seattle on like potential if they can ever like get right. And then there's kind of like a tier of like every team, and then it's like Arlington and Orlando at the bottom.
Well, I'm with you. I have tickets on Houston, Seattle, and then I actually have right now St. Louis is 3rd. DC 3rd, St. Louis 4th.
Yeah, I would probably have DC 3rd, St. Louis 4th. Like, you got to kind of do it that way.
If you're betting.
And then like San Antonio, Vegas. But those teams are all kind of like, I think when we get down the stretch, I think home field advantage is going to be really important in kind of separating these teams because, you know, I think they're pretty close and they're pretty competitive. And you look at a lot of those teams, like San Antonio plays in the Dome. That's going to be a fun environment. St. Louis plays in the Dome. The one thing about, you know, St. Louis, 2-1, 3 games on the road. Now they still got 5 games left at home, throughout the schedule. So, and it's kind of like the opposite for Houston. I think Houston played all 3 games at home, so they have 5 road games.
I think they were away for the San Antonio. No, you're right. I think they got all.
Yeah, I think they played all 3 at home. So they have 5 road games. So as we have them sitting at top, maybe that kind of pushes them down towards the rest of the pack a little bit. And we get, you know, some chaos in the final weeks, which is what I want. I'm here for all the chaos. But, you know, guys, listen, we appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you download the Sharp app, get all the best odds, get all the best tools, all the best information. Hop into Discord and get all the best bets. So our guys are popping off winners every single day. Make sure you hop in there, see what it's all about. Join the community. Listen, it's all about sweating bets, winning, having fun. It's going to be an awesome spring with March Madness. We're getting into baseball season. So make sure you join us. Download the Sharp app. We'll see you guys next week with week 5. Hopefully all these bets cash, and we'll see you on the other side.